think the whole world's on hip hop time right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see what the students' questions will be.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What is the class again? What is the course?
So this is it's particularly tying into my English 125 course, which is on literature and music. And I think there's a number of other classes that are sort of jumping in.
Participant. Right.
Yeah, and then as part of
hey everybody. So we're live, just to let you know. So just welcome. I'm gonna share this little video and we'll get started. I'm gonna go back on mute.
Here we are.
On Mars, but instead they want you paying back mortgages, trillion-dollar budgets, common sense shortages. Whatever they want, just give them more of it. Giving us advice that will slowly poison us.
Million lives buried in a million live buried. Who they killing in a hurry with the medicated drip? These times are trip. But Audrey Lorde got some grandbabies. Crenshaw and Burke got Kelly on a stand, baby. And if you didn't believe it, then believe it now.
Blame someone, so they take the children from them. I'ma tell you what the truth is. They're making up excuses. System is abusive. Social workers ruthless. All they wanna do is divide and conquer.
Intercultural Hip Hop Forum.
Oh, yeah.
Forum.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome. We're live here. Welcome to the 2020 International Hip Hop Forum. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I'm speaking to you from today is the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Sinaitic First Nation. We're privileged to be able to meet here and, much like a hip hop cipher, exchange ideas in this virtual setting. My name's Paul Watkins and I'm a professor of English. I'm an academic, but before that I was a hip hop listener and then an artist, and I occasionally DJ and keep the spirit alive in my own pedagogy and teaching practice. Big shout out to Simon for keeping this thing going for 4 years now. It's been a privilege to moderate these panels. It's lovely to see all of you here. There's a lot going on in the world today, especially just down south of us, which happens to fall on Guy Fawkes Day, a reminder about fighting systemic oppressions. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot, as the traditional rhyme goes. With some of those happenings around the world, that might come into our conversation, but I'm really looking forward to having a far-ranging dialogue about hip-hop music and culture. Hip-hop unifies and celebrates, but it can also resist and serve as protest as we continue to fight the powers that be. The real beauty of the culture and art form of hip-hop is that you can create community with little more than 2 turntables, some records, and an MC. No turntables, fine. You can beatbox. Hip-hop has always been global and regional, since it was, after all, crafted by a Jamaican, Kool Herc, and then fashioned into new forms that even included disco and European techno by a Bronxite, Africa Bambaataa, who was influenced by his formative experiences he had in his travels to Africa and Europe. And Herc was doing this music in the mid-1970s. In a Canadian context, we see Indigenous hip-hop effectively articulating the struggle of Indigenous peoples in post-colonial Canada on Turtle Island. We need on campus, or in this case on Zoom, and more importantly in our communities, strategies to search for new ways of understanding the world and one another. While hip-hop is a revolutionary art form, although most current hip-hop videos say otherwise, and we've seen some older hip-hop heads sell out to the Donald, its beauty still lies in its power to bring people together, to unite. And the 3 artists we will hear from today have that power to connect people through their music, and we're fortunate to have them all together in one Zoom call. Nantali Indongo is a Montreal MC of Caribbean roots and a member of the multilingual hip-hop supergroup Nomadic Massive. In addition to performing live hip-hop, Nantali is host of CBC's Montreal's Provincial Arts and Culture program, The Bridge, as well as a regular arts contributor for CBC Montreal. Indongo is also the co-founder of Hip Hop No Pop, an educational and interactive workshop series that looks at the non-violent origins of hip hop culture and uses hip hop as a tool to encourage storytelling and foster confidence in youth. Welcome. Curtis Clear Sky is a Vancouver MC and a funk musician of Blackfoot and Anishinaabe heritage. In 2005, the United Nations Human Settlements Program designated Clear Sky as an international messenger of truth, a group of artists recognized for their ability to reach young people through their music. In recent years, he has shifted efforts to his band, Curtis Clear Sky and the Constellations, a hip-hop funk group that invites engagements and participation in healing, growth, and recognition of Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island over funky, danceable grooves. And our last panelist was part of our first panel back in 2017, and so it's a privilege to have him here again with us. Moshiri has lived in 4 countries. He was a refugee at age 3 and a Canadian citizen at age 19. He speaks English, Farsi, and German, which is very impressive. He first became known in Canadian hip hop as a member of Sweatshop Union, a BC conscious hip hop collective which has produced 6 albums and earned many awards and Juno nominations. He's now focused on solo work and applying his hip hop experience to inspire creativity and musical expression among children and youth through workshops and after school programs. Mo released his first solo album, Can I Tell You Something, in 2019. And now I want you all to tell us something. So perhaps we could start with your first encounters with hip hop music. And then beyond that, if you could explain when you first realized that you could use hip hop or music just more generally as a form of self-expression. So whoever wants to sort of take that, you all get a chance to talk about that, but whoever wants to get things going, just your sort of first experiences with hip hop music and when you realize that you could use it as a creative tool or outlet.
I'll jump in. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's joining us on Facebook. Thanks so much for that introduction, Paul. I have to say that I had an introduction to hip hop before realizing that it was hip hop. Had a lot of cousins who were DJs in Montreal and who were playing block parties in the neighborhood where I live in Montreal, called Côte-des-Neiges, which is a really multicultural neighborhood. And I lived in the sector of that hood that was predominantly English Caribbean, mixed with a lot of Orthodox Jews and Greeks and South Asians. So that was way back in the 80s. But I really have to say my first introduction to hip hop culture was at about 8 or 9 years old. My mother took me to see a movie. She took me to see Breakin', and she realized at that point that I needed to have an interaction with some cultural content where I could possibly see myself, because I was this urban Black kid growing up in a community where there wasn't much representation of people like me in any kind of media, in any kind of really public artistic expression that I could connect with. My mother was from the Caribbean, so she had her roots and I could be drawn to that. But she saw something in this culture that was buzzing around that maybe could be some sort of a foundation where I could see myself. So that was my first real interaction. And then from that point on, anytime we traveled to Brooklyn to see family, which we did quite often, and my mother would go on these shopping sprees, because back in the 80s, the thing to do was to go to the States and buy, everything on the cheap because it was more expensive in Canada. While she was doing that, I was recording all of the radio stations that were playing hip hop music and playing rap music. And I was learning all the, the latest dance moves from my cousins who were all into this culture. And it wasn't until a little bit later, maybe in my teenage years, when I started to really participate in dance and every aspect of it. But we were like 17 and going to what's called CEGEP in Quebec, which is like a college before university. And this is the 90s, and we were that generation in this city who really tried to create some kind of community through hip hop culture, all aspects of the culture, without really knowing that we would be considered artists. You know, I remember scenes in the hallways at school watching people in ciphers and really being amazing poets, and myself even urging to jump in because I was studying English lit as well. But yeah, at that time in the 90s, early 90s, I don't even think, I truly believe that people did not realize that they were artists and they were creators. And I didn't really connect with the professional side of it until much, much later when I joined Nomadic Massive.
Awesome. Thanks.
Curtis, you want to go next?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, reflecting back, you know, when did I first connect with hip hop? And for me, it was a great question to reflect on, and taking me back, you know, I first, like growing up in the 80s, you know, hip hop was on the peripheral. It was around, you know, in Vancouver, you know, probably not so much as Montreal, but, you know, still around in popular culture to a degree. But for me, I mostly connected with it directly when I was coming of age, when I was coming into puberty around 11 or 12, is when I was introduced to it. A friend of mine introduced me to Kool Moe Dee, Maestro Fresh West. He gave me the tape, said, hey, listen to this. And we listened to it, and immediately I connected with it. You know, I felt it. I felt the spirit of it. I felt the soul of it. And immediately I loved it. I connected with it. So that was like my first introduction of real direct connection with hip hop. And, you know, being Maestro Fresh West, also from this side of the border, is also, you know, a nice little connection. And it's you know, around that time was an interesting time because there was a lot going on in the world at the same time. In Canada, in the United States, basically, two major events were happening. One was the Rodney King riots down in LA and throughout all of the states and all over, in Canada too. And Tally, you could probably talk about that, maybe what that was like in Montreal, but you know, I was aware of it and aware of the racism. And simultaneously nearby also was events that were happening in Kanasatake, the attack on the indigenous Mohawk people near the town of Oka, just outside of Montreal. As a young person, these two major events were happening, and you know, learning about hip hop and you know, the racism. And for those young people, the students or people who aren't aware, you know, check out Kanasatake, 270 Years of Resistance, a documentary on National Film Board by Alanisa Bomsawin. A major important document that highlights what was happening at that time for Indigenous people who were standing up to protect a sacred burial ground from being turned into a golf course for these rich elite people. And Indigenous people were standing up and they were saying, no, you've taken enough from us. We're not going to let you desecrate our ancestors and build a golf course on top of them. Pretty straightforward. But, you know, in some other eyes, somehow they see it otherwise. So with that being said, it was a very definitive moment for me as an Indigenous person, recognizing what that was, that racism that was, I guess, that was targeting me and targeting other people of color, brown people, people of color, Black people, and all the other colors of the different shades. We were being attacked by white supremacy. And yeah, it was a definitive moment for me because it really identified, you know, learning about hip hop, learning about what was happening. And it was kind of a cross section of space where I, you know, recognized the tool and the empowerment of hip hop and what that can do for people. And then I learned about Public Enemy. You know, I learned of other conscious voices. And for me, that stood out really strong. And I knew that, you know, hip hop was a tool for us, as a tool to fight and to protect ourselves and to uplift ourselves and to share our voices and ensure that we challenge that. And yeah, for me, it was the Oka event, Kanasatake, a spark was lit within me. And at the same time, hip hop was lit in me at the same time. So it was like this my spirit was like, you know, this is what I'm doing. Yeah.
Awesome. Mo?
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear this from both of you here. I grew up around the world because my parents were political. They're part of the revolution in Iran in the late 70s. They're socialist, social democratic people, and so things didn't go their way. You know, the Islamic Republic took over, and so we had to get out. My dad was a political prisoner. I grew up in Germany, so I never, from an early age, I always gravitated towards the political. Well, it wasn't even that. It was just that I saw things through the lens. Like I was like, oh, everything that's happening is because of the same kind of stuff. I was kind of, you know, I was never really, didn't have a chance to not know that stuff. So anyway, fast forward till I was 6 or 7. We would go visit our cousins in this housing, in a housing project, and just over the next part of town. And we lived in housing projects as well, but it was my older cousin, so we'd hang out with his friends, and they were breakdancing. The first time I remember seeing people breakdancing on cardboard, it did something to me. I was like, oh, what is this? Because the beats, right there, I'd never heard anything like that. It was probably, you know, Run DMC or something like rugged and really simple. And I was like, I didn't have anything to compare it to, you know? So it really lit me up in that way. But I never felt like I was cool enough or ready enough to be a participant at that time, until, you know, I became a bit older, and then rap really got me. So that was probably like, right away, I got into things like what we called so-called reality rap, or gangster rap at that time, you know, like NWA, like Ice Cube, like Ice-T, like Paris, Public Enemy, like you said, people that really were talking about, you know, rough and rugged things around the neighborhood, but they often were pointing the finger in the right direction of the system, of white supremacy, of all these other kind of things that we've all been dealing with. And so that I found finally a voice in all the music I'd heard in my life. I'd never heard anyone say anything that approximated the struggle that I felt, not just for my people, but for all people. And so I was like, whoa, this is something. I still didn't feel like a participant until I was a bit older, but that's really what I remember hearing. Probably, I think I could really pinpoint it to like Ice-T's OG album, Paris's Gorillas in the Mist album, or I think that's the one, or maybe it's, I don't know. Like that's not actually the name of the album. But anyway, when they were talking about specific, like the Black Panthers, it really affected me because I grew up around a lot of these political adults that had actually been part of a revolution and you know, all that. So that's when, you know, when I was 13, 14, when I was like, oh, I want to try this. I have stuff to say too. I've been through a lot of stuff. And I didn't know that it was going to lead me on like a lifelong pursuit of music and art and bringing consciousness and music together in the way that it has. So I'm super thankful for that.
Awesome. Those are 3 just really detailed, fantastic answers of the ways that sort of hip hop lit that early spark in you, but also served as its own tool, right, of education. And you know, hip hop's got all those references in there. You know, it can be party music. That's totally fine too. But you know, it has that political dimension. Thinking of that KRS-One song, I think it's Poetry, right, where he says, now you're forced to listen to the teacher and the lesson, right, that there are lessons that are being imparted, and that hip hop is self-reflexive, and it does have its own tools of self-critique, right, even though from the outside it doesn't always seem like that. So I'm want to transition and just think about, given the World VIU Days theme, if you feel that hip hop is an accessible medium for cultural dialogue. And some of you talked about some of those cultural aspects. You know, a number of you speak multiple languages, right? You know, Nomadic Massive itself is a group that's multilingual and multicultural, right? And so there are these elements happening. And I would even argue that hip hop, its form itself, right, is multicultural, and that it adapts, right, and that it incorporates. So, you know, do you see hip hop as a bridge between cultures? Anything you could perhaps touch in relation to that?
Yeah, I definitely, you know, Curtis, you were sharing so much there that I had all kinds of scenes in my mind of that time that you speak of during the Oka the Oka crisis. And it's interesting because at that time, for me, hip hop culture was exclusively about Blackness. Like, it was my tool to help build my consciousness around Black identity in North America. And it wasn't until much later, especially through Nomadic, but a little bit later in my life, where I started to even realize how many other people were drawn to this cultural expression. And what I started to notice for sure was kind of what Mo touched on, was this aspect of this kind of like political, social, truth-telling, basically, components to the culture and to rap music in particular. And I think 100% that I think it's more than a bridge. I think it's actually a part of oral tradition that stays as raw as possible, and hence communities and people around the world who actually have, all of us have oral tradition. People, for some reason, I think the people who are drawn to this culture remember their oral tradition when they hear rap music, ultimately. And I think so over time, like, to go and sit and break bread in indigenous communities and hear indigenous rappers express themselves in their languages, it just feels normal and natural. Same thing with Africans, where I've traveled to Congo, or listening to like Senegalese rap, or in Haiti. We were in Haiti in 2010, just after the earthquake, and we were doing some workshops over there with some young artists in the community. And ultimately it was about giving them an outlet, giving them some support while they were trying to, just get through and get by. And they expressed a need for art. And here were these rappers who were just going off in Creole, and everything that they were talking about was about this need for change and governance, and also recognizing the self and being so joyful that they have this skill set. So I think ultimately, I think that's really what it is. It's not so much that hip hop culture is a bridge, but rather it is a memory. It is something that's in the collective memory of people around the world. And what makes it different in different places is industry, is how it's marketed and how it's used. And so it looks like some sort of product at the end, but in fact, I'll beg to say that it's actually a memory of our collective human communities.
Thank you. No, I like that term. Yeah, collective memory. That's a brilliant sort of way to put it. And it just shows that hip hop culture, it's not this thing that's of the past, and that's even though we see the effects of corporations, right, and what that's done to maybe some aspects of commercialized hip hop, but certainly as a living, breathing culture, right, it continues to crop up in communities all around the world, right? Curtis?
Yeah, thank you. Before I follow up with that, I just want to acknowledge, and I should have from the start, and thank you for doing the acknowledgement of the Nanaimo territory that you're on there, Paul. I also want to recognize where I am, and thanks for recognizing me. I'm Niitsitapi and Anishinaabe. Niitsitapi, also known as Blackfoot, and Anishinaabe, and I'm here in Vancouver on Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh territory, and just want to recognize the beautiful people's territory that I'm on here. And and at the same time recognize, you mentioned Turtle Island. A lot of people don't know, but many different First Nations communities, Indigenous peoples, recognize the continent that is known as North America. We call it Turtle Island. It's part of some of our creation stories. So that's a recognition that's widely recognized. Taking it back to Sister Tally's comments, the human cultural connection, for sure. It is that expression. It's in the modern form. It's the spirit. It's people's spirit. It's that connection of being together. Is unity. It's a culture. It's music. It's that good spiritual expression. It is the movement. It's the dance. It's the visual. It is all the aspects of hip hop. For me, I've been saying this for years, and and other people too talk about how we see the four aspects of hip hop. We also have the medicine wheel, and the medicine wheel is just recognize that the different aspects of life in the world that we live in, and many things come in different forms of four, and that includes seasons, elements, directions, states of life, and on and on and on. You just keep going and going about all these different things that come in that shape of four, including hip hop. And hip hop has those fundamental elements that are the medicine wheel. You can actually check out another amazing artist, David Strickland. He's got a video with Uncle Ernie Paniccioli out of New York, who's also was involved in hip hop in the early 80s, indigenous elder. And they talk about that as well. And it's, it's that connection, that human connection of who we all are. And we're earth, wind, fire, air, water. Where are the elements? And hip hop is that. And it's just natural. All my relations. Thank you.
All my relations. I agree with both of you guys very much. And I think it's one thing that as I got a bit older and I learned about hip hop, as you learn, because, here's the thing, it's not like some kinds of music where you can be like, oh yeah, this is, this some guy invented the electric guitar and yeah, maybe it came from here. It's not acknowledged where it came from. Like, rock and roll when we were growing up was seen to be a white form of music. And then we found out, wait, no, it came from the Black tradition in the South. And so hip hop right from the beginning had its own cultural, it has this whole sphere that you step into that you can learn. So that's something that really attracted me and it speaks to what we were talking about here is that, look, if you're physically inclined, there's an outlet for you. You can break dance and battle that way or just have fun. If you're not physically inclined, but you want to rap, you can rap. If you like to talk, if you don't like to talk, you can learn how to DJ or, if you're an artist, you can do graffiti. So it gave an outlet to all of us. So that's something that for me was very unique as a culture. Well, maybe not, but as a subculture, as we called it back then. And I think we just called it culture now. But at that time, it was called a subculture, and we didn't realize how powerful it was. And so one thing I learned once I started making beats, and I knew this, is that it's essentially deconstructivist. It can take anything and put it in the pot and it'll just work, right? And you see this up until the recent time where finally with A Tribe Called Red, we found even our native brothers and sisters were able to use their traditional music over hip hop beats. And we're like, oh my God, this is so powerful. When I met them in Austin at South by Southwest, I was like, I've been waiting for this. I think we all have. It's never been done like this. There's been indigenous artists, but just the music had never been fused like that, as far as I knew. And so for me, that was just a confirmation that hip hop not only does it build or can act as a bridge, it is its own whole subculture that can accept everything else into it. So everyone can exist within it and stand on their own merits. They don't have to try to be this way to be part of it. They can just be who they are and express themselves in whatever way that they can. And hip hop, as we were growing up with the elders that we did have access to, which wasn't many that had been in hip hop longer, they always were like, look, if you study up on this, look, we mediated gang wars with hip hop, look, we gave people an outlet. There's all these examples of the success of hip hop as a culture that allowed people to heal from all the crap that was happening in their neighborhoods. And so learning that and being like, man, I knew there was something good about this. I knew it was more special than it appeared, and once you learn about it. And so one thing I always equated to is when I first saw a DJ spin the record back, that was like a mind blow moment for me because the record player is sacred. No one's ever allowed to touch it, right? This is like in the school, in the home or whatever, never touch the record player. And all of a sudden you hear him wheel it back and you go, oh my God, that's dangerous what he's doing. And then it really gives you an idea of that's exactly what it does to culture, to this ongoing so-called manifest destiny supremacist culture. We wheel that right back and we'll use the part that we like. We don't have to listen to the whole thing. And I love that. That really spoke to me. Yeah.
No, those are three really just thank you, in-depth, fantastic answers with lots of resonances between them, right? And just even thinking, right, about the turntable and it particularly, thinking of the Techniques 1200, right, from 1972, and just the way that was repurposed, right? And just thinking of how aggrieved communities have been able to use the tools at hand to create some of the most innovative art that's actually changed the direction, right, of the 20th century and then the 21st century, right? Change the very course of how we perceive one another and understand art, right? And I think it all goes back to the fact that there are those various elements, right? That starts with DJing, right? And then you get the MC, right? And that's coming partially, right, from Jamaican and culture, right? And reggae and the toasting and the boasting elements, right? And then you get the breakers, right, dancing, and then the graffiti, right? So you've got these various elements. And then, of course, there's that other element of people coming together, right? That sort of fifth element. I want to ask something in relation to just focusing on some of the political dimensions, because there's been a lot of that going on, and then relating that to the coronavirus, if possible. So I just want to read a quote here from the Man Booker Prize winning Indian novelist Arundhati Roy. And she speaks about the coronavirus pandemic as a portal. So she says, I'm just reading the quote. She says, historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It's a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. And scholar Robin D.G. Kelly, he agrees, saying that this pandemic is a portal, and as a portal, it's just an opening. And as an opening, nothing's guaranteed, but it's an opening because it exposed the structure of racial and gendered capitalism and the violence meted out to people who are the most vulnerable. So what role does hip hop play, right, in this critical moment? And you might even think of that just whether it's the political dimensions or not, right? I mean, how do you make hip hop, right, at this moment, particularly where, you can't have necessarily those elements connecting in quite the same way? I realize there's a lot there, but sort of hip hop in this moment, or what you're doing with hip hop in this moment.
Good one. I'll take the first one on this. I'm not gonna have a super clear thought out answer on this because I've been riddling this as well over the last 9 months. But one thing I will say is that we can't talk about this without talking about the things that happened to hip hop culture, in terms of the corporatization and the kind of takeover of hip hop's true core in some ways, or attempted takeover. So it's like, I think hip hop, as we hold it in our hearts, could be extremely effective right now. But what we do see is that the vast majority of our role models in hip hop and people that are famous and very popular, they're so deeply embedded in the corporatocracy that they can't really talk about it that way. They can't really level a real criticism at the system anymore. So I've seen this time and time again. You'll get the occasional, like, Cardi B, someone that just says whatever comes to her mind, and she'll say something like, wow, I can't believe she said this. Like, she had a couple of things to say where I'm like, I really didn't expect her to come out and say that. But having said that, that's a whole nother conversation about the corruption of our ideals by corporations. But what I found is hip hop is kind of intertwined with the conspiracy community, right? So it always has, because it speaks of a conspiracy at its core. It always has. It's like, hey, look, these guys are doing this all over the world. It's basically like who said it? Chuck D or someone said it's like the CNN of the streets. It's kind of telling you, look, we didn't just get to be like this. Just look what happened. There's a context, so that's something that true hip hop and people that are living and standing in the culture of hip hop still maintain, is the context. And that's something in a post-truth world is very, very valuable, because we're losing context of why things are the way they are. How did we get here? How come, speaking of Haiti, Nantali, it's something that blew my mind when I learned, years and years ago. They're like, well, look at Haiti. You see all these people on rafts trying to come over there. It's like, it's an AIDS thing. Everyone's dying and people eating dirt cookies. And then it makes you think, like, deep inside, don't you think they weren't like this before? How did they get like this? What's the context? And the context is the system's always trying to sweep it under the rug. So you don't really, what? So you have to take people at face value. Oh, they're just like this. They don't know how to govern other countries. They don't know how to treat each other. Look at black on black crime, all this boogeyman stuff. But once you know the context, and hip hop has been standing clear in that context ever since the beginning, if you remember that context, you'll never be duped like that. So here in this pandemic situation where there's a lot bubbling to the surface, a lot of people that have been in the conspiracy community for a long time, and maybe not like deep in it or believing it, but knowing about alternative facts that do exist, a lot of that stuff's been bubbling to the surface. And so hip hop, if you're well grounded in the understanding of that we learned from our culture of hip hop, you know, it's not as confusing as it is to the general public. That's how I felt. You know, I have a context that I will not let go because it was taught to me by my elders. And so that's something that I hold very, very dearly.
Yeah, Mo. Yeah. For me, I would say, well, two things. In terms of the pandemic, for sure, just in terms of being a professional artist, that has really changed the way we're able to work, you know, and just tours and all that kind of stuff canceled. And so therefore our opportunity to really share our message is extremely limited. However, like right now, this evening, people around the world will actually be able to still see a Nomadic Massive show online, and maybe possibly more people than had they seen us at the Nuit d'Afrique, African Nights Music Festival that normally happens in the summer. So there's a positive, there's a plus there. But I wanted to also speak to just the fact, what I appreciated about what happened during the pandemic. So we said we had the virus, but we also had the reckoning going on, right? And we had all this awakening around systemic racism and violence against Black bodies and anti-Black racism really come right up to the top. And people got raw and had to face that. And what I truly appreciate, well, I'm going to say appreciate, because I don't think people are done with it. I really believe that some people are still keeping their feet on the gas, is that many institutions had to really take a look at themselves. And maybe it was just for show, but whatever it was, they were very public about, like, we need to do better, we need to figure out. And what did that do? That created more space for Black creative production, artistic expression, but also hip hop expression within that. So I'm thinking of things like even CBC Music creating a list of protest music, and more than half of the list was rap music, and not just contemporary rap music, but rap music from way back, and Canadian, and chaos, and men and women and non-binary folks. So I really felt like, okay, here is an opportunity for those of us who are usually out on the ground trying to share the message and say what the stories are and say what the truth is. Here was an opportunity for us to, like, use the institutions that were around us to spread that. And so here I am listening to this, like, Black Lives Matter playlist on Spotify, and it's all Black artists and it's all Black rappers, and everybody's talking about Blackness and everybody's talking about anti-racism. And that was key for me. That was huge, you know? And I think what that did or is doing is creating an appetite for that. I feel like there's a resurgence. I don't know if you guys are seeing it, Curtis and Mo, but I really feel like there's a resurgence for that particular kind of politicized, what we used to call conscious rap, coming back up. And so many artists, and also an appreciation for lyricism. Like I'm just running into all these new rappers and MCs who are really wordsmiths and crafters of their language. And I feel like in this moment, people have had an opportunity to build an appetite for it and start to dig and find out the truth about it. So there's something definitely positive there for the culture, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Hip hop. Okay. So taking it back, hip hop is a gift. Hip hop is a blessing for the people. Hip hop is a medicine. Hip hop was gifted to the people, urban marginalized people, as a tool to uplift and empower. And like any medicine, if it's misused, abused, it can cause harm and violence. Tobacco for First Nations peoples, many of us that have that traditional connection to it, it is a medicine for us. It is our spiritual tool. It is a plant, sacred plant to us, chief plant, grandfather plant, grandmother plant. It's an ancient plant that we have a connection to. And it's been taken from our people and taken outside of our cultural use and misused as this medicine's been harmful to many people. It's killed people. It's caused disease and violence to people's lives. And I guess when you use that analogy, if you look at it like that, hip hop, if you have this tool that can empower and heal and give and guide people, if it's misused and corporations get their hands on it and turn it into this commodity and turn it into this production sort of idea, it takes away that connection for the people. And I think that's what is happening. That's what's happened, obviously, as we all see, like to the extent on the extreme on the other side of hip hop, when it's not being utilized in a healthy way, we see that. But it's still that tool, no matter what, for those that are connecting with it in the way that it was gifted for the people. And I think in reflection of the pandemic, of what's happening, yeah, definitely there's like a resurgence. There's like the reset button's been pushed, and all that corporate genocidal perspective on hip hop doesn't matter. Who cares about all that stuff? Because it's not about that. It's about community. It's about family. What is important to people? It's their immediate connection. Everybody's been put into a situation where life's values are being reconsidered. What are those life values for individuals? It's not about all that, about the corporate impact. It's about the human impact. And Tali, like you're saying, it's coming back to, people are looking at the valuable literature that's often been overlooked, that valuable perspective in hip hop that's been overlooked for decades that been going here. So it's coming back to that. Yes, hip hop is the medicine. Hip hop is a tool. And pandemic time, it's reset time. And it's okay for us to rest. It's okay. The world, the people, society has been going with this machine, this corporate machine, this economic system that's been pushing us. And we haven't had a chance to relax and breathe for a minute and take care of what's important to us, what's right in front of us. And it's okay. We're giving Mother Earth a rest. We're giving time to reflect and look. And we've never had this opportunity, really. So as a collective. So here we are, and positive things are coming. So many positive things are going to come out of this time for all of us. And as an Indigenous artist, I was in another conversation. They're like, how is it affecting you? How's it affecting your business? And people are freaking out. And for me, it's like, oh, well, as an Indigenous person, we've been living like this. This is how we live. We've been in crisis for years. We've been dealing with this. This is just, welcome to the party. And, it's resilience. It's years of resilience of living with challenge is, for many of us that are marginalized, this is not new to us. We've been dealing with this and we know how to deal with it. We can handle it. You can put on a mask. It's not a big deal for me. It's temporary. I'm not worried about it. Anyways, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, the pandemic of white supremacy, right, is something that's, been on this continent for a long time, that many people have lived with and lived through and continued to resist and fight, right? And, there is a reckoning happening, which is a good thing, I think, as a lot of people are having to confront ways that they might be complicit, right, in that system, and hopefully help to dismantle it. Just looking at the time here, if we could move now, I know I had asked all the panelists if they'd be willing to share one verse of something, right? And we'll see how this works over Zoom, a chance, right, to perform. And then, of course, go check out their work. So, check out Tally's work, check out Mo's work, check out Curtis's work. I'm happy to send links, and you can see some of that stuff certainly on the VIU Connections page. But I think now would be a good time if everybody's willing to drop an a cappella verse for us, and then we'll have some time for questions. So Simon over on the Facebook page is going to share the link to Zoom. If you want to hop on to our Zoom session and ask questions in person, that's going to be an option for you, or you can ask them directly to Simon on Facebook, and he'll moderate that and pass those questions on. So I don't know who wants to go first here, but we'll sort of go around like a short little cipher, and that will, and then we'll move to the question period. Mo, was that a
rock, paper, scissors? I don't know. I'll go first. I'll kick it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay. All right, a cappella style here. And yeah, it's reflecting back, thank you. First of all, thank you for this great conversation. Thank you for moderating. Thank you for re-sparking all these questions, allowing me to think back. And thank you to my fellow panelists, the relatives here. Thank you, Tally, Mo, and appreciate it. Yeah, great to talk about all these things. So taking it back here, this one comes from a song on our album called Indigifunk, and it is titled Survive and Honor. And it goes like this. Armageddon's in your life, chaos on the rise. Will you live or die? Natural disaster. Time is moving faster. Time to capture. The soldier's master. Use his own blaster, the paper, the pen. No time to pretend. Climb on in. Warrior mode, it's time to expose the truth and behold. The proof is told to the youth who hold ambition. Listen, revolution mission. Death is a given, so fight for the life that we're living. Inventory goods, organize our hoods. Feed the food to the children and the women. The circle is a spinning, natural balance. Indigenous children with natural talents. Patiently wait, then smash the silence. All straight love, no more drugs. Family get you by, satisfied high. The system is a lie, 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 lie. The people on the rise, 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 rise. Survive and honor. We can get stronger. Build the home for the youth of tomorrow. In the future, we'll live so truthful. Spirits direct us to protect the precious. All my relations.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Well, with that, who wants to go?
All right, I'll go next. So we talked a lot in this conversation about origins of the culture and the links to, especially to Caribbean culture. That's something that I maintain with whatever, some of the things that I write and my contributions to the music and Nomadic Massive. And so sometimes I flip it in patois and on some sort of, dancehall kind of vibes, as well as straight up, rap. So I was just kind of thinking about what would fit this conversation, and I figured I'd do something in patois and that kind of speaks to this. So this is a verse that I kicked on a track that we did with a French producer named DJ Guts, and he did this like remix of the same track called Move in Silence, and he hollered at us and we did this remix, and so that song is out there. So my verse goes, yo, speak truth, my youth, and I'm nothing still. I wear them books say long time for them time to kill. Them running drills, yo, but we ride the rhythm. Sit down in my kitchen, sweat your rice, me and the sistren. Watch the sit and watch for frighten feel with children. Stay bad minded, come for frighten when I shit stim. And if you listen, then we done with politics and thing, this money thing we settling, not come to make no friend and thing. Them coming through with them robo, cop boat, snipers on the block, gun and shot, call it traffic stop. The whole world I watch, so make the world jump off. Because we're not business with your blah, blah, wishy-washy talk. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. All right, Mo, you're up.
Awesome. Yeah, you guys, those are really good. I actually had to kind of think about it a bit because I wanted to do something that kind of that fit the theme of what we're talking about. There's a lot more I could do. I kind of wanted to keep things a bit PG as well. So, so this one's actually from Sweatshop Union, the last Sweatshop Union album, Infinite, song called "Time Granted." I can still recall the day when my father came home from a decade in prison to find nothing was the same. No. Reaganomics we were raised on, Ice Cube, Slick Rick, artifacts, the altar that we prayed on, fresh marker black to autograph the city, hanging with them harder cats with heart that lack pity, and we learned from it. Turned numb, kept them headphones on, the burning sun, waiting for the world to plummet. Made it through, now I'm touching on the truth. All I want to do is pass it on to you, 1, 2. And when I pass, I leave this mask behind. What I came to do is master life, and I pray and wish the same for you.
There it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Tally. Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah.
Three wonderful verses there that linked up really nicely, I think, and that was beautiful. Right? That we're able to do that even in these little boxes, right? That we can still speak to one another. I think Simon is moderating any discussion questions that might be coming in, and he'll jump in. I don't know if we'll have some. Did you share the Zoom link around, Simon? Maybe we'll have some.
I did. Yeah, I shared it in the Facebook feed there. I just want to thank each of you for doing this, being on the panel. Moshiri, Nantali, Indongo, Curtis Clear Sky. Thanks so much for being part of this 4th annual Intercultural Hip Hop Forum, and to Paul Watkins for giving what I do some academic legitimacy, I think, which helps. So this is really great. And I want to let people know that it's not over. There is a cipher event, of course, online cipher. It's going to be this evening, 7 p.m. BC time. And it's an experiment, of course. I don't think anyone who's on the cipher this evening has done it before. So we're all we're just going to give it a go. We're going to have fun. I've invited past participants of the forum. So I hope people tune into that. That'll be live as well. And there will be a couple performances at the beginning and some surprise guests doing that. So I'll just look at the Facebook feed here. There's some bunch of comments. We've got some fire symbols, some high fives. We've got an agreement, hip hop is medicine. A comment, I love that. The oral traditions connect us and hip hop is the rawest form. There's, someone remembering Rodney King and Oka, and kind of a shout out to Côte de Neige neighborhood in Montreal.
Hey.
And let's see, I think there's a question at the bottom here. Do you think you can be a great artist if you don't endure some suffering or oppression in your life? Question from Ashley.
I think you can. I think that a lot of people think that you have to have gone through a lot of stuff, and it's probably fair to say that if you have gone through a significant struggle and kind of overcome it, or in the process of overcoming, you may have more to say. You may have a more emotive, like if you say it, more people will relate because everyone's struggling. So I can see that, but I do believe that there is just pure art, which is pulling something from nothing. And I don't think that depends on your struggle as a person. I really don't. I think that it's more about how you can enter that kind of field of infinite possibilities, which is a meditative kind of state that artists kind of enter naturally. And maybe it's true that trauma leads you to be able to do that more easily. I don't know. I do know that there is a lot of pure artists out there that don't necessarily have chips on their shoulders or a hard life. And I think we gotta acknowledge that as well.
I think it's about honesty. Honesty. I mean, if we're talking about specifically about being a rap artist, I think it really is about how well you just tell your truth, whatever your truth is. And it shouldn't be a trauma competition. That's for sure. Yeah.
I think about the children, and I think about, a lot of young children, not all, of course, sometimes there's intergenerational trauma, but, when we're looking at the children, having access to expressive opportunities, ways to share their voice, share their talents, enhance their skills and abilities is a beautiful thing. and it gives you strength, because I think no matter what in life, different spectrums of challenge are going to happen, some more severe than others, but the skills and those abilities give us the tools to be able to go through life and empower us through expression, whatever aspect, visually, musically, instruments. I appreciate musicians, visual artists, dancers. All these things give you the empowerment and the tools. So I believe, it's about being empowered with those skills.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any more questions. Maybe a couple more high five symbols there showed up. Yeah.
Do you have a question, Simon? I mean, I can always ask another question, or
Sure.
we don't have to go too long. But I don't know if you have a burning question that you yourself would like to ask the panelists while you have them here.
Well, I guess this is sort of an aspirational thing looking forward. One thing that I love about organizing this event, I get to connect different great artists who I know would instantly connect with each other. And I think that it's mutually, I don't know, reaffirming or inspiring to get together, even for me as a selector and a promoter, to bring these kind of kindred spirits together. So I guess it's not a question for the group, but maybe just something to put out there, that let's try to stay in touch and keep each other in the loop, especially for anyone coming out to the West Coast. There's a little hub here that can support you. And it's already happened, actually, I think with each of you. So let's just keep it going. Let's keep this good thing going. And maybe especially for Tali out in Montreal, if you have people, everyone out, part of your super fam, as you like to say, with massive other contributors to this kind of socially conscious, community-oriented hip hop. Let's keep spreading and bringing these voices out west, and vice versa.
Yeah.
We're not as established, I think, in the West with alternative hip hop, or however you want to call it, but we have a few voices, and there's two of them right here with you. So
yeah, but I mean, I think Mo's been to Montreal with Sweatshop, right, Mo? I think we did a show together. Way back, and I was blown away. I was just like, what? These people are here. These people exist. And Curtis, I don't know if you've been to Montreal, but it would be amazing for you to come through, because I think that's key, especially with regards to the quote unquote Canadian context. And I think across this territory, there are so many pockets of artists and thinkers and creators who are speaking the same kind of language that we're speaking here today, but we can't always find each other. And I think it just leaves too much room for that corporate stuff to like slip in. Especially, that's my biggest challenge with Quebec. In Quebec, the language, the dominant language is French, and the artists who kind of get to really be heard, be it on radio or not, they tend to be folks that aren't necessarily, not to say that we all have to say the same thing, but we need a more of a balance here, and especially that reaches the mainstream, and so I think, like, it's Simon, if we can keep that connect going, and people can, I don't know, do some more online ciphers across the country type of thing.
I agree.
Yeah, that would be special, and that would be key.
Yes.
So there are more questions that have shown up, or go ahead, Curtis, but I'll just let you know there are
the relationships. Relationships growing, and it's good to connect with everybody. Tali, Mo, thank you. This is how it is. Yes, we connect, we build relationships and strengths, and empower each other, and reflect off each other, and grow stronger together.
And grow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a message here again from Ashley. I love Sweatshop Union. Saw them once in concert. So
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay, question. Here we go. What is your favorite period of rap or hip hop? And that's for each of you.
Easy question. Golden age of hip hop, 90s hip hop, the peak of hip hop. I mean, but maybe we're still not at the peak, but that was definitely inspiring for me. Those artists are always elevated way, way, way up there and had brought it and shown us what it is. And for me, that's always, I hold all those artists so high.
Yep.
I think
Second
that agreements on that one. Definitely like 90 to 98, 2000. That's like, to me, is the perfect time for hip hop, because it was complex enough where it's like cerebral and it's passionate enough, and it wasn't really fully taken over yet. But right after Biggie and Pac got killed, literally the next year, Double XL magazine cover, the freshman, it was all the other guys were like, oh my, what's happening? It happened like overnight. Like, I remember that, And so I'm like, that's 98, 99 is probably about that edge where, it became something else. It's still great. It's just that it's not golden age like it was. But.
No, but you know what? Come on. We have to recognize that there are I don't even know what to call them, but I feel like the late 2000s, like from 2008 on, there's been someone, a 1-2 voice here and there, and like, and I feel like we're circling back, like, Denzel Curry and
totally.
folks like Rock and of course the roots that never die, the roots that never go away. They've been through all the eras. I'm super down for D Smoke right now. Like, I feel like those are the voices, right?
Yeah,
and Kendrick,
true.
of course, Chance. I feel like those are the voices that hearken. These are the people who study golden era for sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
And could bridge it.
Yeah.
New,
they're
right?
like the great grand or something.
That really speaks to your earlier point, Nantali, about it's circling back around, because culture can only handle so much of the same thing.
That's it.
There's a backlash or whatever you call it, and then it has to come back to base. And that has happened. Like, people like Lupe, like Kendrick, Cole, they carry that tradition, but they appeal also sensitivities of the newer kind of generation, which is amazing, and older heads, like I'm 40 now, so I'm gonna say
it.
And to us it's like, well, that's how when I hear those older songs, it just makes me feel a certain way. So to me, But as a scholar of hip hop, we got to also acknowledge that's when all this multisyllabic stuff started happening. All the real criticism happened from Rakim, Cool G Rap onwards. And so Nas being like the first real fruit from that tree, like, whoa, this guy, who is this person?
Yeah.
Then everyone wanted to sound like that. So all of a sudden, even if you're like not a very lyrical rapper, your basic rhyme pattern has to have at least 2-3 syllables.
2-3 syllables,
to be like on the level. And so that's, to me, that's something we can never take away from that.
That's true.
The newer guys, like you said, Denzel and some of these other guys, they took that even to a full another level, which I think is really awesome. And so whenever I hear people of my generation talking badly about the new hip hop music, I can't really get down, because I'm like, you know what? First of all, I love the beats. So to me, I'm like, the beats hot anyway. I might not listen to it again, because lyrically I have to have something in there too.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? But the beats are, so I can't really hate on that. And the way they're doing it, it's I was trying to say it, I have a 12-year-old son, and so he's kind of on that. And I'm like, you know what? They do a lot more with their attitude than we did with our words sometimes, or they do the similar. Their nonchalant or their way of expressing kind of betrays a certain sort of like vibe, which we had to speak and really spell out on the mic, whereas they're doing it just with the way they are, which is really
swag. Yeah,
it's a different way of communicating,
Yeah.
Right, we have a couple more questions that have come in. So this is from Jack. Any recent albums or songs that have influenced you with their lyrics or storytelling? Who wants to take that one?
I can't drop any lyrics from this album, but everyone, I am doing some serious PR for this sister, because she's the bomb and the truth. Her name is Sa Rock, SA-ROC. The album is called The Sharecropper's Daughter, and it is fire. Like from the beginning to the end, you need to hear this sister because she is brilliant. She's the truth, and I could name drop some of the folks that are on the album. It doesn't even matter that the Black Thought is on the album. It doesn't matter that Slim Williams is on the album. She is the album. She is this person is what we need right now. So everyone, please go and listen to Sharecropper's Daughter. She's a DC sister originally, but she's based in Atlanta, and she's just amazing.
That's a good.
Right. Anyone else have a recent artist that's influenced you with their lyrics?
Well, lyrically, yeah, like lately, the last while, you know, there hasn't been too much that's kind of inspired me. Like, just, yeah, that's just what it is. Like we're hearing that it's more about the swag and the attitude and the expression. So lyrically, yeah, not too much. I mean, there probably is, but generally, yeah, speaking, for me, musically, I've been big appreciation for musicians. I play with musicians in my bands. I bring live elements to the music. It just brings the music alive. And for me, a band that really stands out for me is Antibalas from Brooklyn, New York. Really and cool. Whenever they come to Vancouver, always there. Just you're on your feet from when you get into. You got sore feet till the next day. So yes,
that's another really dope one.
Yeah. For me, and it's going back actually musically back to the 70s. George Clinton, Funkadelic, Parliament Funkadelic.
He got a new record out.
Yeah, still going. And now the recent stuff and old catalog stuff from 70s, 80s is still bumping.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think I would also say something, I agree with both of you guys' suggestions there. I think there's a lot we could probably say, you know, Kendrick, guys, although he hasn't put a record out in a while. But actually, I'm kind of always at a loss because when I'm around just at home and stuff, I don't really listen to hip hop very much at all anymore. And I do, it's not like I don't, but like when I go to go for a drive or if I'm cleaning the house, I'm actually lately, for the last 2 years, been listening to a lot of African music, especially contemporary African music. And so specifically Nigerian and South African music. But so there's a guy, here's an interesting, if you're interested in the trajectory of hip hop. So Burna Boy is from Nigeria. He's so dope. And so the cool thing about him is he's not a rapper, but you'll see how our multisyllabic style has influenced African music as well. As if you listen, his album is called The African Giant, the one I'm speaking of.
Yeah.
Great songs on that record. But what I really know, I mean, there's so much good to say, but one thing I noticed as a rapper was, wow, he's using multisyllabic rhymes in a non-rapping sort of way, which is kind of new. Like, you know, it's not.
Is it new though? Is it new though? Is it not
right?
The circle back? Is it not the circle back? That's what it is.
And it's a joy to see and hear. Yeah. It's a joy to hear because it's like, it really seems very natural, right? It's not like he's trying to do it.
No.
And so he's actually a really great, one of the cream of the crop of the Nigerian coming out, him and WizKid and some of the other guys. I just feel with him, he's a lot more conscious than the other guys. Like, I've never heard him say anything denigrating of women or anything like this. He's pretty good, you know? And so in that way, I can really recommend him wholeheartedly. But Giant by Burna Boy, I'll say that's a great
fire. Yeah, that's a really good record.
Okay, so we're just about at the end here of our time slot, but there's one more question from a student, I believe, Cheyenne. Hip hop and urban centers seem to go hand in hand. Have you seen much of a hip hop scene outside of city centers?
Yes, yes. First Nations, rural communities, reservations, hip hop is alive there. Yes, it's alive there. Many artists coming off of the Rez, Snotty Nose Rez Kids example. Yes, it is alive. And people are finding a voice. Again, it's a tool. Medicine, hip hop is a medicine. It's a tool. And those that are able to connect with the medicine in a good way, in an empowering way, they're finding their ways.
That's it. Yeah, and I spent some time in Congo. I spent like a month in Congo, and we were working with rappers in 3 cities. And Kinshasa is definitely an urban center, so there are a lot of folks there. But we went to, interestingly, it's the second largest city in the country in terms of population, but in terms of infrastructure, it isn't as developed. This place called Kikwit, and kind of crazy situation. A lot of mining going on there, but in terms of the support to the people who live there, really, really no support. And there were rappers in Kikwit, there were MCs in Kikwit. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, 100%. Hip hop is alive everywhere where people can, like as brother Curtis says, find the medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of, if you look at the inner city as the epicenter of an earthquake, where the two, you know, things are really at odds together, like the people and the system is a very, very kind of closed system that you can see that in an urban city. The aftershocks reach all the way through. So I think that that's for me too. Like, I mean, I grew up in cities, but I found like in the mid 90s when gangster rap was really popular, when I lived in the New Jersey suburbs, I was blown away by how many of these kids that grew up in these like beautiful little suburbs very much for some reason enjoyed and related to that very hardcore hood music. I'm like, where, why, how, why? There's something about it. Because I think even if you're not part of that struggle, especially for in the case of like so-called white kids, they feel like they're an outsider. There is a subconscious knowledge that we're all involved. You know, we're all culpable at some level. We're all in some way in the struggle, whether we think so or not. So I think hip hop reminds you of that subconsciously. So I think that what you guys are saying really bears that out as well in my experience.
That's great, Mo. I think that's actually a good sort of point perhaps to end on. And hip hop is global, right? It's everywhere. It's in sort of the smallest of communities and the largest of communities, and it continues to speak, right, in this moment, and it will continue to, right, for
Forever.
You know, some time. Forever.
Forever.
Right? Yeah, right. So this is a PSA, right? You know,
Hey,
presidents,
hey,
prime ministers,
hey.
right? They're temporary, right? But Wu-Tang is forever. Hip-hop is forever. So, anyways, it was a pleasure. Pleasure to see you all. Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you for having us. It's really great.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And thank you to thanks to everyone who came in. Yeah, Miguel.
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys soon, I'm sure.
Simon, do you have any announcements, or just maybe remind people
check out the Cypher tonight, 7 p.m. The same page, VIU Cultural Connections Facebook page. There's going to be some surprise guests on there, some past participants of the forum, and whatever happens, we're going to have fun. So that's it for now. But yeah, take a little break.
It's going to be awesome.
Hip hop culture, yeah.
Awesome.
All right, thanks everybody, and thanks for all
Peace,
the
brothers.
Facebook. Yeah.
Peace,
All right,
everyone.
be safe.
Much
Be
love.
safe. Much
safe.
love.
Peace.
Take care.